The game is really good. That's the entire review right there. I'm joking, by the way. I've got quite a bit to say for this game, but first, as always, I'll cover the context and I guess a bit of the story before diving into my thoughts on the game. Bayonetta released back in 2009 on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and I definitely did not play it back then, so better late than never, right? It released later on PC in 2017, along with also releasing on Nintendo Switch a year later, and finally on PS4 and Xbox One in 2020. Unlike the last few videos, I actually avoided looking up any reviews regarding the game as I was somewhat aware that it was quite popular, so in my mind that meant it had to be good, and thankfully I was right. The game is an incredibly fun experience, although I've not covered the other Bayonetta games here, seeing as they're not out on PC, so if they ever do release, then you'll definitely see me review them. But before I continue, please consider subscribing. It'll help me out massively as I continue to produce these reviews. Okay, I'll get back to the video. Immediately diving into the story, it's engaging and definitely has that late 2000s video game charm and is just an overall fun experience. Nonetheless, I wanted to look firstly at the narrative standpoints of the game. Bayonetta, our protagonist, is a witch who was awakened 20 years ago from the bottom of a lake with no memory of her past, so we set out to find something important to her and some things happen. I won't give spoilers here, it's okay. There are incredibly strong themes of heaven and hell in this game. Heaven being called Paradiso, hell is called Inferno, and there's another realm called Purgatorio, which is kind of in between the two but is still separate to Earth. I thought the way it was explained and blended into the gameplay was quite good. Bayonetta is believed to have one of the eyes of the world, specifically the left eye, and is tipped to learn that the right eye is currently in a place called Vigrid, where the game takes you on an incredible journey through all of these beautiful places that are deeply entwined with the story with a fair few things to do. Now, granted that this game isn't exactly the newest, I wasn't really expecting it to be flooded with items or side content, but I was quite surprised and I thought it was quite decent, although it's a very linear experience in which you largely just move forward throughout the world, and thankfully I think it works quite well. The areas, although linear, are decent in design and have some sort of familiarity while also providing something new entirely. At times it feels like you're just walking down any old street in Europe, and then the next second is somewhere mystical or hellish. The way it constantly flips is really intriguing and perfectly ties in with the story. Speaking of the story, it's quite good. The pacing is good with pieces of emotional depth, but that's not really on display in the first half of the game, unfortunately. However, I think the two characters that epitomize this the most are Luca and Jean. Luca is a supporting character who is out to expose the truth about Bayonetta for killing his dad. He experiences quite a lot throughout the game and learns the truth about what he saw as a child. Jean, one of the other side characters in the game, has a deep connection with Bayonetta, and we find her throughout the game, and the character development is more interesting considering that we fight Jean throughout the game. The action on display throughout the game is set and held to a fantastic standard, with fights becoming more cinematic and more challenging, although some parts admittedly are a bit over the top. You'll see what I mean if you continue watching the video. Moving on to the sound design, I think it's decent. The voice acting in particular is really good, with Bayonetta's voice actor in particular having a really strong performance. Other voice performances are good as well, but you don't really get much of an opportunity to hear from them outside of cutscenes in select areas, which is fine, but I think for me to care about the entire cast, their inclusion, even if it was just for a few more minutes throughout, would have allowed me to really become attached to the world here. Now, of course, we have the most important question people will ask, is the combat good? And yeah, I'd say it's pretty good. It's easily one of the best hack and slash games I've played, and I think there's quite a lot of opportunities for experimentation, especially with regards to the range of weapons available to use and the skills available at Bayonetta's disposal. As mentioned just a minute ago, the action is fast paced and the fights in this game are as well. What I did appreciate was the slow time with perfect dodging. This allowed you a few moments to get off a few combos of attacks while the enemies move considerably slower, which is a testament to Bayonetta's witch powers. One of my favourite features of the combat is if you aren't hit for a period of time, you can build up these little pearls under your health bar, which allows you to perform a torture attack, a devastating attack which in most circumstances will kill enemies, but for bosses and larger enemies will do considerable damage. I thought this was a really neat way to reward the player for playing smart and aggressive. There are a nice range of these attacks and each one felt satisfying to execute. Along with these attacks is button spamming, and I don't think I've ever had to spam buttons on the controller so much, but I think it's actually quite a fun thing. Even with the amount of button spamming and QTEs available, I felt like I had to lock in during most sequences because I'd be so absorbed in the combat that I'd miss the QTE or miss out on damage, and missing some QTEs can result in the player's death, so no pressure. Another feature that I thought was quite a neat inclusion was upon completing a chapter, there'd be a mini shooting game where you'd get points based off of the targets you shot. These points could be used to buy items or be traded for halos, which is the currency in the game. I thought this was a nice little way to keep things fun and get a fast reward in the process. There are also a few other sorts of one-time events as well, which I thought were quite good. Firstly, the Alpine portals are challenges the player can complete. These often require the player to complete fights while meeting certain criteria, like fighting enemies within a set time period or a limited amount of kicks and punches. There were also a few one-off encounters in the game which I thought were really cool, particularly the motorbike part part I thought was incredibly fun. It does drag just ever so slightly, but I could easily counter that point by stating that it shows the scale of the world and how much attention to detail the game puts into these areas. I thought the ending was a strong point of the game. I thought the way it blended conflict, action, and the mystical nature of the story into one was really good. There are quite a few revelations during this part of the story, and I think that's why it stands out to me so much. The fights are fun and offered quite a bit of challenge and really pushed the player to use all their abilities available. There were plenty of moments during this part of the game where there was just so much going on and I just couldn't deal with everything that was happening. The music in this game is also really good. It helps to solidify moments throughout the game as you just hear it creep into the background as you're in the middle of a fight or exploring the world around you, and I felt it completes the game, complementing the world and character design flawlessly and making the experience much more refined and enjoyable. I also quite like the crafting system the game had, along with the little lore pieces the game leaves for you to find. The crafting system was easy to use and even provided a template showing what you needed to craft each item, which was appreciated. However, the actual items used were quite hard to come by. Like, I destroyed every breakable item to find as much as I could, and even then they would only drop one item at a time, and enemies didn't provide much more, so I thought that was a little disappointing because as a whole I thought it was really neat seeing as the actual items were really good. Going back to the lore pieces I mentioned just a minute ago, I think they're always appreciated. I don't mind collecting lore pieces this way, largely because it avoids the need of having one large exposition in the game which could overwhelm the player, so having these parts of the story be built as you openly explore the world is a nice change of pace. The PC port is fine and performance wasn't really an issue for me. I saw some comments online after finishing my playthrough and saw that some people had issues with glitching and crashing, but I didn't experience any of that. The only issue I did have to deal with was some awkward hair physics, but outside of that the game performed without any issues. As much as I've praised the game, I do have a few faults of it, so I'll just go through them quickly. Firstly, my biggest issue with the game is the camera. I feel like it works against you for the most part. Even after experimenting with it along with inverting some of the settings, I just couldn't get it to work for me, which was a real shame because it was the only thing that took away from the experience for me. I think this is especially noticeable in the fight with Jean towards the end of the game on the missile. I found that I was fighting with the camera for stability more than I was fighting Jean, which, and by the way, was a really good fight, but I thought that the camera interfered with it a little. My other issue with the game is also towards the end, unfortunately. I was confused by the inclusion in previous bosses. When we beat the bosses throughout the game, they're taken through a portal or something, so naturally you'd assume that's them done, we don't see them again. But the placement here towards the end of the game was to make the fight to the top more challenging, but I didn't really understand their inclusion. I think the actual fights on display were good, but I think it should have been other enemies that we fight here, almost like an onslaught, just because for me I think it would have been more suitable for the story and to avoid padding out the game slightly. Oh, I didn't even give my thoughts on the enemies, so let me do that quickly. I thought they were actually well designed and varied. Each enemy has unique fighting styles and offer their own challenges. I thought it was a really cool concept to give us the ability to use their weapons against them, and I enjoyed the variety of weapons that were available for use and the fact they each had their own unique skills. So to conclude this review nicely, I think the game is fantastic in nearly every way. The action on display is great, the voice acting is really good, along with an incredibly detailed world that keeps you hooked from start to end, and the game is also quite a quick experience, taking about 8 to 10 hours to play through if you're looking just to get through it all quickly, although it can take way longer if you're a completionist as there are a multitude of challenges and quite a lot to collect. As always, thank you for making it this far into the video, I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please consider liking the video, or if you have any games you want me to review, please let me know so I can add it to my ever expanding list. Hope you all have a good start to the new year, and I'll hopefully see you around soon.